Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the Key of David today. Now, this is a very controversial topic because the Key of David is something that me and my brothers and sisters have received, and we understand the prophecies of the Key of David. We understand what it is. We understand how you receive it. We understand what it means to receive it. And there is a lot of people who hate the fact that that is the case. Now, very recently, there has been one guy who is one of many who has gone up against me and my brothers and sisters, spoken some real stupid, slanderous, false accusations against us, calling us a cult, just calling us a cult, plenty of other stupid things. And one of the main things he said was, oh, these guys think they have the Key of David. No one can have the Key of David apart from Yeshua. Well, that's not true. Yeshua has the authority to give people the Key of David, and that's how it works. But no, of course people can... Of course, the Key of David is a spiritual blessing given to the servants. Okay? Now, the only people who are going to be able to receive the Key of David are the servants. So, all these people who go up against us and they're like, these guys think they have the Key of David, ha ha ha. Well, you just revealed yourself that you're not really a servant. And especially when, you say these guys don't have the Key of David, but then you can't explain what the Key of David is either. Like, again, you're just exposing yourself and you're making yourself look like a complete idiot. Well, because you are a complete idiot. And there is a warning at the end of Revelation 22. And I'm going to read it here from verse 18. For I testify unto you, every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book, if any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of this book, of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life, and out of the holy city, from the things which are written in this book. So, part of what we're going to read, and I'm going to go there first actually, in regards to the Key of David, Matthew 19, right? This is really, really important to understand, okay? When Yeshua is teaching part of the Key of David, in Matthew 19 verse 11, he says, But he said unto them, All men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. Okay? So, and then at the end of verse 12, he says, Him that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So, the Key of David is only going to be given to a certain group of people. The servants. Okay? Now, some people have 1 talent, some people have 5 talents. Okay? So, if you're watching this video as I go through it, and you're sat there thinking, nah, I'm just not understanding this, that's okay. Maybe it just isn't your time to receive it. We all receive meat and juice season, and we all receive talents according to our several ability. It's okay if you can't understand it right now, but just don't. For the love of God, for your sakes and for your children's sakes, do not despise prophecy. Do not quench the Holy Spirit. Do not slander this spiritual blessing. Don't run your mouth and say, that's not what the Key of David is. Because what I'm about to explain is truth. This is what the Key of David is. Okay? And there's no two ways around that. So, and me and Andrew, we made a video on the Key of David. My wife's done a video on the Key of David. My brother Dan has. Mark's done a video on it. I think my brother Matthew in the US, he's done a video on it. I think a few of the brothers and sisters have done videos on the Key of David, and I'm just adding to it, you know, for another witness. So let's get into it. So going to Revelation 3 first. It says from verse 7, "Unto the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David. He that openeth, and no man shutteth, and shutteth, and no man openeth. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. Because you have kept my word, you have kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, and let no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name." Okay, so first of all, one thing to point out, I believe, is it Sardis? I think it's Sardis. Definitely Philadelphia, but then I think it's Sardis as well. They are the only two churches that don't receive a rebuke in the in the opening of Revelation here. They don't receive a rebuke, and the Church of Philadelphia, they represent those who are going to be part of the 144,000. Okay? The Key of David is a blessing that the 144,000 will receive. Now, that's not to say that everyone who has the Key of David is part of the 144,000. And there's a distinction between the two of those, and I hope you understand. Okay? The 144,000, they are the servants. Okay? But there's this thing in Revelation 66 where it talks about New Jerusalem, which is the 144,000, and those that love them. Okay? So there is this, it seems as though there's the 144,000 and a separate group of servants who love them. Okay? But that's kind of besides the point. I was just making a point about Philadelphia here. Okay? Now really, it would be easier in this video if I go through these other scriptures, because Revelation really is the summary of all prophecy. It's quoting the Old Testament over 600 times. Okay? So to really understand what this section of Revelation 3 is talking about, I've got to go through all the other scriptures and then kind of keep tying it back to Revelation 3. Okay? So the first place I'm going to go to is Matthew 12. Right. So from verse 1. At that time Yeshua went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were an hungered, and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. Pick up on the detail that it's the Sabbath day. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, Have you not read what David did, when he was an hungered, and they that were with him? How he entered into the house of God, and did eat the shewbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law, how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath, and are blameless? But I say unto you that in this place one greater than the temple. If you had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless, for the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to point out here is in verse 7. Yeshua quotes Hosea 6 verses 6 and 7. Go and learn what this means. I'll have mercy and not sacrifice. Okay, now Hosea 6 verses 6 and 7 is, I've said it a few times now, that is the gospel in 2 verses. Okay, because it's showing you that God never desired these burnt offerings and animal sacrifices and stoning each other. That never pleased him. He always wanted us to receive mercy and to show mercy. He wanted us to receive the Spirit of truth so that we could understand his word, so that we could have the humble, contrite spirits that fear and tremble at his word, and that we could watch for each other. Yeshua came along. He ended that sacrificial law. He elevated the royal law, and he allowed us to offer up these sacrifices worthy to God, the humble and contrite spirit, and the communication amongst the brethren. That's Psalm 51 and Hebrews 13. Okay? Now, the reason why Yeshua quotes this verse when he is teaching the key of David is because, as I've said, the key of David is a spiritual blessing that is only given to the servants. It is only given to the servants. Now, he's speaking to the Pharisees, and he's rebuking the Pharisees when he's teaching this. Okay? Now, when in Matthew 22, let me quote 1 John instead. In 1 John, when he's talking about loving your neighbor as yourself, he says, "This is not a new commandment which I give." Loving your neighbor as yourself is not a new thing. It's all the way back from Leviticus 19. That's where your definition of loving your neighbor as yourself is. Leviticus 19. Okay, so even under the sacrificial law, the option to love your neighbor as yourself, to fulfill this royal law, to rebuke sin, was always there. And I've given this example before, but I'll go through it again. Well, like, if my brother comes to me on Thursday and says, I'm going to go work a few hours on Saturday, and I say, what are you talking about? It's a Sabbath day. Don't do that. And then Sabbath rolls around and he's like, man, I can't believe I was going to work. Thank you for the rebuke. Well, even though we're under the sacrificial law, I saved him from committing that sin. And so I fulfilled the royal law, even though we're under sacrificial law. Now, same example, Saturday rolls round, he goes to work, he breaks the Sabbath. Well, because we're under sacrificial law, now I have to stone him. Okay? But now, as I say, Yeshua ended that. So now we can forgive 70 times 7. And we can keep rebuking even if people keep sinning. Okay? However, these Pharisees, although the option to fulfill the royal law was there, even though they were under sacrificial law, they couldn't have cared less to do it. They weren't bothered. Look at the adulterous woman. They were just ready to stone her. When in fact, they should have been guiding the people and teaching them, but Yeshua constantly rebuked them for this. You care more about the tithe of anise and cumin and mint than the weightier matters of the law: judgment, mercy, and faith. Okay? These Pharisees, they weren't watching. They weren't doing what Ezekiel 2 and 3 tells us to do. All they cared about was this sacrificial law. They cared about their own traditions of men. They cared about walking through the streets with their haughty necks and, looking all fancy in their get-up. They didn't care about actually doing what was pleasing to God. And so Yeshua quotes Hosea 6 to make a point to them that because you aren't servants, because you aren't serving God, you haven't received the key of David. And so because you haven't received the key of David, you blame the guiltless. Because Yeshua has the authority to give the key of David to his disciples, because notice that it's Yeshua and the disciples who are plucking the ears of corn. The disciples are able to profane the Sabbath just like David did, just like the priests in the temple did, but remain blameless. Okay? Now, how do we know what David did? Well, Yeshua tells us, go and learn what David did. So you'd be a fool not to go and learn what David did. 1 Samuel 21. Okay, so from verse 1. Then came David to Nob to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? And David said unto Ahimelech the priest, The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I have commanded thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand, or what there is present. And the priest answered David, and said, There is no common bread under mine hand, but there is hallowed bread, if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. And David answered the priest, and said unto him, Of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days, since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in manner common, yea, though it was sanctified this day in the vessel. Okay, and then the priest gives him the bread, because he's like, oh, okay, you and your men, you have been sanctified through this 3-day sexual fast that is written in the law. Okay, well, how does David know this? Well, Psalm 119, verses 99 and 100 tells you why. David knew the law better than his teachers. David meditated on his testimonies day and night. So David knew what he was talking about. David knew that there was this clause in the law where the priests in the temple could profane the Sabbath and remain blameless. But how could they do that? Okay, so here's your answer. Exodus 19. Verses we'll go from verse 10. This is when Israel have agreed to the Holy Covenant, and then God is saying to Moses, all right, get the people ready to come up to Sinai, and you'll receive the covenant written in stone. So from verse 10, And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto the people, sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes. Be ready against the 3rd day, for the 3rd day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai, and thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves that you go not up to the mount, nor touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall surely be put to death. And there shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. And Moses went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ye ready against the 3rd day, come not at your wives. Okay, be ready against the 3rd day, come not at your wives. Don't have sex with your wives. And, it applies for women as well. We're going to see this. Women can receive the key of David as well. Don't have sex for 3 days leading up to the Sabbath. Okay? Now, I'm going to go through a couple more examples of where we see this 3-day sexual fast, because the key of David, although it's a spiritual blessing, part of the spiritual blessing is how you receive it. And you receive it through, through your servanthood, but also through this 3-day sexual fast. Okay? So, if we go to 2 Samuel, chapter 11, chapter 11. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right, let's get into it. So chapter 11. From verse 1. And it came to pass, after the year was expired, at the time when the kings go forth to battle. Okay? Big detail there. After the year was expired. Okay, so the Hebrew calendar, the beginning of a new year is the springtime. Okay? So after the year was expired is the springtime. Because when a year ends and when a new year begins is the springtime. And that is when the kings go forth to battle. This is hugely prophetic. Because when the 144,000 are caught up at the sixth seal and they return to execute the judgment of God on the earth with Yeshua, that is going to be in the springtime. Learn the parable of the fig tree. All of that prophetic stuff of the end happens in the spring. Okay? So, the kings, who are the kings? They're the 144,000. Yeshua is the King of kings. Okay? So, this is in the springtime. That David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and Rabbah, but David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass at eventide that David arose from his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired of the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers, and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her. For she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. And the woman conceived, and sent and told David, and said, I am with child. And David sent to Joab, saying, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And when Uriah was come unto him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. And David said to Uriah, Go down to thy house, and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house, with all the servants of his lord, and went not down into his house. Okay, detail to pick up on there. Uriah slept in the door of the king's house. Alright? Slept at the door of the king's house. Day 1. And when they told David, saying, Uriah went not down into his house, David said to Uriah, Camest thou not from thy journey? Why then didst thou not go down unto thy house? And Uriah said unto David, The ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into my house to eat and drink, and to lie with my wife? As thou livest, and as thy soul livest, I will not do this thing. And David said to Uriah, Tarry here today also, and tomorrow, and I will let you depart. So you've got the first day, which effectively was yesterday, today, and tomorrow. 3 days. 3 days. And when David called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at even he went to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, but went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, Set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. And it came to pass, when Joab observed the city, he assigned Uriah to a place where he knew valiant men were, and then he ends up getting put to the front of the battle, and then he gets killed in the battle, and you know the rest of the story, okay? But that's besides the point. It's not relevant to what we're talking about now, okay? So Uriah, he is a he's a servant, okay? He's a servant. He's a soldier for Israel, and he refuses to go home and to sleep with his wife. Because really, the reason why David wants him to go home is so he has sex with his wife. So that David can cover up his tracks. And that, Uriah, when she starts to show and she's pregnant, then Uriah will think, okay, it's my kid. That's why David wants him to go home. Okay? But Uriah's like, nope. I got Israel and Judah and the Ark of the Covenant out there in the field. They need me. I'm not going to do that. Why do they need him? Okay, it's because the enemies of Israel would purposely go up against Israel in battle on the Sabbath day. Because remember, throughout like Exodus and Deuteronomy and Joshua and stuff, it's always talking about how that Israel is known by this great law, by this great covenant, and this great God that they obey. Okay? The ways of Israel were known amongst the Gentiles. Oh, this people, they do this and they do that. They keep the Sabbath. So, okay, if we're going to go up against them, we'll go up against them on this Sabbath day that they keep, because they can't do anything. So we'll go up against them, we'll be fighting them, and they can't fight because it breaks their Sabbath day. Ordinarily, yes, it would. But all of the soldiers of Israel, they were sanctified by this 3-day sexual fast, which enabled them to profane the Sabbath and go to war on the Sabbath, but remain blameless. So the men of Israel could go to war on the Sabbath day, but remain blameless. Okay? At a time, they were physically going to war. Now the servants, we are spiritually going to war on the Sabbath day and remaining blameless. Okay, so when you look at Yeshua and the disciples, they were going to spiritual war on the Sabbath day as well. Because they were always coming up against these people, going against them. They were going around fulfilling the royal law, healing, doing good on the Sabbath day. And they were plucking ears of corn because they were hungry. Notice though, that they weren't harvesting. They were plucking ears of corn. They were taking what they needed. Okay, so if my brothers and sisters out in America who go through to these Torah movement congregations and Jewish synagogues on the Sabbath day to fulfill the royal law, you know, middle of summer, if it's red hot and they've been drinking water because they're thirsty and they run out, if they need to buy a bottle of water and they go into a petrol station, they can buy a bottle of water, profaning the Sabbath, but they remain blameless. Because my brothers have the key of David, they're profaning the Sabbath, but they remain blameless because they are doing the will of God on the Sabbath day. I'm going to point out right now, by no means am I saying, oh, if you have the key of David, you don't have to keep the Sabbath. Absolutely not. Keeping the Sabbath is like the foundation of receiving the key of David. I'm not saying that, oh, you received the key of David and then you can go and build a fence at the bottom of your garden on the Sabbath day. You can go to the cinema on the Sabbath day. You can go to work on the Sabbath day. You know, you can go buy a new car on the Sabbath day. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you can do the will of God, and if it is necessary, you can profane the Sabbath and remain blameless. Now, say hypothetically, I'm going out and about fulfilling the royal law on the Sabbath day. Well, I'm going to prepare. I'm going to bring some food, you know, bring a couple of sandwiches, bring a few bottles of water. You know, I'm going to try and do my best to not have to profane the Sabbath. But if it's necessary, well then okay. I have the key of David. I'm doing the will of God. I'm a servant. It's okay. You know? So, Paul also teaches this sexual fast. 1 Corinthians 7. Right, so verse 5, he's talking about husbands and wives. Verse 5, defraud you not one another, as in, he's saying, don't withhold sex from one another. It's your husbandly and wifely duty. Okay, defraud you not one another, except it be with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again. Okay, so, you know, there's probably people who will say, that's not talking about sex. He's saying, you know, you can fast from food and all that. Well, no, listen to what he's saying. Defraud you not one another, except it be for consent. So it has to be a mutual agreement. It can't just be, right, okay, honey, we're not going to have sex Thursday to Saturday. And she's like, well, I want to. You know, it has to be an agreement, okay? With consent that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer and come together again. So you haven't been coming together for a time, so it's a sexual fast. Come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. I speak this by permission and not of commandment. Okay, so having the key of David is not a commandment. If it's not, there's going to be plenty of people in, say, the Exodus and going through tribulation and all that sort of stuff where they're going to have to get repentant fast. And chances are they're probably not going to receive the key of David, and that will be fine. God is not going to deny people from the kingdom because they didn't have the key of David. Okay? Anyone out there who says that we've taught that it's a salvation issue is a liar. That's not true. Okay, that is not true. So, that establishes the actual sexual fast. Okay, so how do we know that the sexual fast is actually related to the key of David? Okay, because that's something that people can't quite wrap their heads around. They can see this key of David and they can see the sexual fast, but they don't know how they connect. All right, so if we go to Isaiah 22, so this is more or less a direct quote this is directly quoted in Revelation 3. So Isaiah 22 will go from verse 21. And I will clothe him with thy robe and strengthen him with thy girdle, and I will commit thy government into his hand, and he shall be for a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. And the key of the house of David will I lay upon his shoulder, so he shall open, and none shall shut, and he shall shut, and none shall open. And I will fasten him as a nail in a sure place, and he shall be for a glorious throne to his father's house. Okay? So, he will fasten him as a nail in a sure place. Alright? What's that talking about? It's a reference to the law. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 15. So this is talking about the 7th year of release. This is talking, masters, if you have servants, you give them, they have their 6 years of servanthood, and then in the 7th year being the year of release, you let them go. Okay? But in the instance that your servant wants to remain with you because he loves to serve you, this is what you do. So from verse 16, and it shall be, if he say unto thee, I will not go away from thee, because he loveth thee and thine house, because he is well with thee, then thou shalt take an awl, which is a nail, and thrust it through his ear unto the door, and he shall be thy servant forever. And also unto thy maidservant thou shalt do likewise. So this is how we know that the key of David is received of women as well. You do it to the manservant and to the maidservant. If they are willing to serve you, they want to be your servant, then you take a nail and you drive it through their ear into a door. Okay? Now, I'm not actually telling people to go nail their ears to doors. This is a spiritual thing, okay? And we're going to get to it. Okay. Now let's go to Ezra chapter 9. And we're going down to verse 8. It says, And now, for a little space, grace hath been shewed from the Lord our God, to leave us a remnant to escape, and to give us a nail in his holy place, that our God may lighten our eyes, and give us a little reviving in our bondage. Okay? So in Isaiah 22, it talks about a nail in a sure place, and Ezra 9:8 is talking about a nail in a holy place. Okay? And Ezra 9:8 is talking about all the same things that Revelation 3 is talking about. So if I quickly go back to Revelation 3. So Revelation 3, grace hath been showed to leave us a remnant to escape. Revelation 3:10, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation. Those two things in Ezra and Revelation is talking about the 144,000 being taken out of the way of the great and terrible day of the Lord. They're going to be caught up to the throne. Jacob will be taken out of Jacob's trouble. Okay? You also have that our God may lighten our eyes and give us a little reviving in our bondage. Revelation 3:8, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it, for thou hast a little strength. A little reviving, a little strength in our bondage, in our servanthood. Okay? The Ezekiel 2 and 3 watchmen have their heads made hard against these rebellious, stiff-necked, hard-hearted people who we have to go and warn. It's a thankless task 99.999% of the time. We're just getting hated on relentlessly. So God gives us the servants, he gives us this key of David as like a little nudge. Like, keep going. Keep going, wise and faithful servant. Keep going. It's a little reviving, it's a little strength. Because it's the most amazing thing that you can receive in terms of prophecy. It's just unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. Okay, now, this is where it gets really, like, wow. Okay? I think, anyway. This one was just... This is one of my favorite parts of the Key of David. Okay, so in Deuteronomy 15, you've got this instruction for the masters to nail their servants to the door, to the sure place. Okay, a nail in a sure place, a nail in a holy place. Okay, Yeshua tells us that he will open a door that no man can shut, and he will shut a door that no man can open. Okay? Remember that Uriah, where did he sleep? In the door of the king's house. John 10. Alright? From verse 1. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter openeth. Go and read Mark 13. Yeshua commands the porter to watch. And what he says unto the porter, he says unto all, watch. The porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice. He calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. And when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth forth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger will they not follow, but they will flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers. This parable spake Yeshua unto them, but they understood not what these things which he spake unto them. And Yeshua said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pasture. The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep, but he that is a hireling, and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. Okay? Yeshua is the door. The servants are nailed to the sure place. They are nailed to the door, and they are made holy through the 3-day sexual fast that sanctifies them. This, like, go and read all of these scriptures over and over and over again. Okay? Yeshua is the door. The servants are nailed to the door. Go and read Jeremiah 6:16 through to 19. The watchmen who are raised up, they're saying, this is the way. This is the ancient path, wherein is the good way. Walk ye therein. What is the way? It's the holy covenant. Okay? So picture it like this. Yeshua is the door. All the servants are nailed to the door. And you got this narrow path leading to the door. And all the servants are saying, this way, this is the path. This is the door. This is the path to the door. Walk through the door. Okay? Now, they go in and out of the door. They're bringing sheep in, and they're kicking wolves out. This is how it works. Okay? This is how it works. And they are allowed to do that even on the Sabbath day, because they are allowed to profane the Sabbath and remain blameless. Okay? Now, one last scripture. And there's so many more scriptures, but they are just they're the big ones for me. I think that's like, you know, because once you pick up on that, you're going to start seeing it everywhere. You know, if you receive it, then you're going to receive it. You're just going to start seeing it everywhere. Okay? But listen to this. Matthew 19, verse 11. But he said unto them, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb. And there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. And there be some eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. There are some eunuchs that have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. Okay? Not for their own sake. They have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is the people. So these men and women, they make themselves eunuchs, and they're not castrating themselves. They're fasting from sex 3 days leading up to the Sabbath in order so that they can, well, it's because they're servants. And the only reason they're servants is for the kingdom of heaven's sake, so they can go and find God's people. That's what servants do. And it's no surprise that all of the people that deny the key of David, they're wicked servants. They're wicked, wicked servants. There's this one guy who just went up against us, doesn't understand anything in prophecy, and he made this like 44-minute video that is just the most embarrassing thing I've ever watched, because he's just mumbling and mumbling and mumbling, and he doesn't understand anything that he's talking about. He doesn't understand Isaiah 56. He doesn't understand the key of David. He just blatantly lied about my brother and what happened with his wife. For those of you who are watching, you'll know what I mean. I'm not going to go into it in this video. But he doesn't understand the key of David. And instead of keeping his mouth shut and actually just humbling himself and saying, you know, I don't really understand it. Can you guys go over it again? Sure we can. No, instead of doing that, he just ran his mouth, took away the things written from in this book, and he just blotted his name out of the book of life. The man has wife and kids. Good job. Real nice job. You see what you've just done? Do you see what you've just done? All because you couldn't receive it. But that was fine, because we don't teach it by permission and we teach it by permission and not by command. So why did you have to go and run your mouth and blot your name out of the book of life? What a stupid thing to do. What a horrendously stupid thing to do. You know? If you had learned what this means, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. And I don't just mean, and neither did Yeshua. It doesn't just mean, if you had just gone and glossed over Hosea 6, then you wouldn't have blamed the guiltless. No. He's saying, if you really knew what this meant, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings, you wouldn't have condemned the guiltless. If you were actually a servant, and you actually knew the gospel, and you were actually entering into the work of the servants, then you might have received the key of David, and you wouldn't have denied it, and you wouldn't have taken away the things written within this book, and your name wouldn't have been blotted out of the book of life. But you just went ahead and you did it anyway. Pride comes before destruction. So, I think that's pretty much everything that I need to say about the key of David. You know, if you want to reach out and you want to ask any more questions, go ahead. Feel free. If you don't understand it, please don't. Just don't run your mouth. Okay? Thanks.